everybody feel guilty day.
Welcome to the May 13, 2016 edition of Colorado Inside Out Postgame, a special web-exclusive production here on Channel 12. We're off to a rocket start. Let's get a quick take on the members of the Denver City Council and leaders in the local short-term rental market being at odds over possible regulations in Denver. Vacation rental business leaders argue that the controversial primary resident rule would stifle the market. Patty Calhoun from Westward, one side of the equation says these rental situations in neighborhoods are no big deal. The other side of the issue in neighborhood groups say that there's frat parties and brothels. Who's right?
Well, we're all for frat parties and brothels, but there also are plenty of gray areas in between on this, because what people are upset about is that someone can buy an extra building or an extra apartment building and rent it out, but to Airbnb or through VDBO, what is it, VRBO, and it's going to raise rents because it takes those apartments out of the thing. They don't take care of it the way they're going to take care of it the way they would if it was their house and they were letting someone stay in their house or stay in a room in their house. There are a lot of debates. So some of the people say the city's only listened to Airbnb and not to the other short-term rental providers. That's part of the gray area. There are other people who just don't want any part of this in their neighborhood, even if it's someone who's letting people use their primary residence, which is really the way the bills come down now, that you would only be able to do short-term rentals in your primary residence. So that would mean people couldn't go buy those apartment buildings or go buy a house that jack up the price of houses in Denver just so they can make a lot of money renting it out. But we don't get the final vote until next month, and I think we'll see a lot of amendments coming along.
David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. Where's the right level of regulation here? I mean, it's not a brand new business. The VRBO has been around for 20 years, but it certainly has proliferated much more lately. Is there a right level that we're seeing at some point?
Yeah, and I think the primary resident rule gets us mostly there. If you buy a house in a place that's, say, zoned for single family, you're choosing to buy in a place where you don't operate commercial businesses. It's one thing if you go on vacation for 3 weeks and you rent to somebody else, then have to pay for the cost of your vacation, and that's fine, and that ought to be that is part of people's legitimate property rights. But that's very different from buying a house you never intend to occupy, which in fact is just going to be used as a commercial property with a rotating cast of people coming in. That's contrary to the zoning in many areas, and if zoning's legitimate for things like that, then it's legitimate to regulate these vacation rentals to make them just occasional vacation rentals rather than really homes that are just operated as a business with a rotating cast of people coming in and out of the neighborhood.
Eric Sondren, political analyst, who do you think is going to have more sway at the Denver City Council, the neighborhood leaders or the industry?
Well, I would suspect the neighborhood leaders. I think that's where the politics of it are, and I think that's why we've seen it unfold as it does. I'm a little surprised at David's take, since David is usually the most anti-regulatory person at the table. I respect where he's coming from. I'm going to have a slightly different take here, where maybe we have a role reversal going on. No one argues against appropriate regulation and strict regulation, and no one argues that some taxes ought to be paid on these short-term rentals. And I'm not here arguing that you ought to have apartment buildings, but Airbnb is not generally about large apartment buildings, and certainly VRBO is not either. But the economics of this country are changing, and you've read article after article about what's now called the sharing economy. And these similar arguments were all over the place 4 or 5 years ago with regard to Uber and Lyft and ride-sharing services. And at that point in time, those arguments were promulgated by taxi companies. Whenever there's a disruption in the economic order, those people of the old order are going to protest the disruption. And I think a lot of the activity behind this protest or a lot of the impetus is not just from neighborhoods, it's from established interests who don't want the competition. But the hotel industry or the lodging industry is not going to look the same in 5 or 10 years any more than the transportation industry or a whole lot of other industries are. And new economies are always disruptive. That's what capitalism is creative disruption and creative destruction, if you will. And there are always going to be people whose ox is gored, and I'm not arguing against appropriate regulation, but I am arguing against over-regulation and NIMBYism and trying to stand in the way of some different ways of doing business.
Ramsey Scott joins us from the Colorado Statesman. We've seen a lot of different angles of this issue. Where do you think eventually the city of Denver, their council, will go, especially since it's embraced a lot of other parts of this new economy that Eric has mentioned?
You know, I think they'll probably do something to kind of keep this going. I think Denver has that reputation, wants to keep that reputation of being innovative. I think a lot of this is just an example of, you know, legislative sort of catch-up, where this economy, the sharing economy, has been going on for so long that cities across the country are now trying to regulate something that is already established. I think Denver, just because of how young it is, it's a millennial city right now, and this is something that millennials love. I speak as if I'm somehow way older than millennial, but I really do believe that Denver is going to try and find some balance between to protect the neighborhoods, but also to allow this to happen. But the thing is that I don't know if any sort of compromise is going to be struck that those neighborhood leaders are even going to accept. It seems to be more of an absolute for them, like this cannot be allowed. So it'll be interesting to see how the Denver City Council balances this out. I'll definitely be following it.
That's all the time we have for Colorado Inside Out postgame this week. Leave us a comment, tell us what you think. For everyone here at CPT12.org, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks for watching.